Hey guys, welcome back to the Chalanting pod. You might notice there's a bit of an ambiance change. That's because it's after hours. It's literally like 9 p.m., but this is the only time I could think to film an episode because low-key when the week hits, it gets kind of busy. Even the weekend's kind of busy, so I'm like, okay, Sunday 9 p.m. is the only time I gotta film. But don't worry, I got you guys. Don't worry. I have an episode prepared for my followers, so don't stress. But I'm surprised to say we made it to episode 8. Like, that's wild. Like 8 because we ate, yeah. But anyway, this one's a bit more of like a hey, like we're just chatting late at night, just some late night past 9 p.m. thoughts. And of course, just like going through my week, honestly, I realized like this podcast is so nice for just like processing my life. Like, not gonna lie, it's kind of just my personal public yap sesh. So, totally down to just like share the thoughts from the week. But first, let's start with how are we doing? How am I? This week, week 3 of the quarter, I think there were some high points, some low points. I think the high of the week was that, okay, yesterday I went to the farmer's market and that was very healing and I had a great yap. I also made a massive matcha out of like the Rouse tomato jar, like that big. So good. And I was so energized. So yesterday, that was good. And I saw Hella Capella. Oh my, bro, it was so good. So good. So I was healed yesterday. Low point though was that I was just not feeling super good this week. Like, energy was low, morale was low, procrastination was high. So yeah, I'll get more into it, but yeah, that was definitely the low of the week. Oh yeah, today, wait, this is like a buffalo, high-low buffalo, but I mean it was also a high. But I went to UC Berkeley today to visit one of my dear friends, my Berkeley baddie friend, and today was 420, so it was smoke day. It's also Easter, but they have this like, I didn't know this until I like pulled up, but they basically like do a smoke day like gathering on their, I think it's called the Glade, and it's low-key like Berkeley picnic day, but like super dense. And also there was a freaking like trampoline, like couches. I was like, how the heck did you guys haul it on? Like, I have no idea how I got there. I'm like, what the heck? Like, it took me like so long to move the couch to my apartment. How did you move this many couches to like the grass? Like, that's insane. So I was like, but it was also really fun being in Berkeley. It was good to be a tourist and be lit around and like have all the yummy food there. So that was also, I would say, also a high of the week. Okay, because it's 9:20 p.m., I was like, I kind of don't want to get a drink. I also had a very delicious matcha latte from Binge Cafe in Berkeley. It was matcha with like sesame cold foam. It was so good. It was very like nutty. It was very powerful. And I was like, like this hits. So today's drink could be counted as that, but like my on-screen drink will be boom, water, because I'm very dehydrated. So, gotta do what we gotta do. Hey, it's okay if I have a boring drink. Like, I would have been blessing you guys with all these fun drinks, but like, hey, I got water to live. H2O, way to go, right? So yes, that is a drink of today's episode. And then the song, I remember I said music wasn't really hitting, like last episode. Low-key, music still hasn't been hitting that much, and I think I still need to explore new music and like get out of my music rut, because I don't know why every song just sounds like boring to me. And I'm like, what's going on? Like, where's my spark, right? But okay, the song for this week though, the one that did kind of like have something like inside of it, was Mona Lisa by J-Hope. Bro, I don't know what's in that song. Like, it gets me going. It gets me like, so that was good. I was playing it on loop this week while driving. So I'll count that as this episode's song. So let's get into the meat of the episode. Something I wanted to discuss more was, these are all based on kind of like the emotions and like what was happening of the week, but I kind of wanted to talk about like self-esteem, like external validation, like comparison and kind of like insecurity. I know those are like a lot of different topics, but they all like kind of connect. Basically, like earlier in the week, I was just feeling like not super great about myself, just kind of like on a low point, right? And I think there were a lot of factors that contributed to it, but also I just feel like cyclically, like I just sometimes get into a cycle or like a moment where I'm just like, what if everybody actually secretly hates me and they don't want to be friends with me and they're just putting up with me? I know, not a good thought, but it does get in here sometimes. So I have to be like, oh, like that's not true. But I think something that's really hard for me is like kind of accepting my own reassurance and like validation. And I think when I'm in those moments, I really turn to like external validation like so much because I feel like I can't trust myself because I'm like, girl, what if you're being delusional? Like, how can, because if I, okay, here's my thought pattern. If I'm like, no, Johanna, you're good, but let's say the reality is I'm not, then I'm deluding myself and I'm being delusional. And that's also bad. So I think that's why it's so hard for me to like trust my own intuition and trust my own reassurance because it just doesn't feel like effective. And I'm just so scared of being like delusional. So that's honestly like the hardest part. But because of that, I'm also turning to like external validation, and that could be from like social media or like needing to like present very well, as in like appearance wise, or just like I guess really needing like affirmations or compliments from my friends to like kind of feel like better about myself or like feel like I have a higher self-esteem. And I think kind of what I realized was like a lot of my, I think, self-esteem and like self-image is really based on what like other people like say about me, and I think that's what kind of like fuels the self-esteem tank, right? But when that just like runs out, I can't like refuel it myself, and I'm looking for like fuel to add to it. But obviously it's really hard because like if you live your life on external validation, like that's also like not very sustainable or secure, or like that is not what like cultivates like healthy self-esteem, right? But I think for me, I'm still at the point where it's like I can't like fuel myself, like I gotta go to other places for it. And obviously that's like not super healthy, but it was definitely something I was like kind of thinking of more this week. I also don't like, it probably isn't that crazy of a topic to talk about this. I'm not saying anything particularly mind-blowing. I'm kind of just sharing like the way I see things, and hopefully that experience can like resonate with people. But I think at least one way that I've thought about kind of self-esteem in my life that I think might be at least kind of funny, if not like unique or hopefully relatable. The way I kind of see it is like I have these two lawyers within me, okay? There's like good lawyer and there's bad lawyer. So good lawyer is trying very hard to advocate for, Johanna and be like, hey, like, Johanna's a lot of good qualities, like all these like good things have happened in her life, or, trying to cite evidence. But unfortunately, good lawyer is underpaid, does not have a lot of power in this society, government assigned or something. And then the folder for evidence is like not taken very seriously by the jury. Okay, I don't know how far this metaphor is going to go, but not taken very seriously. They're like, I mean, yeah, but like just doesn't hold a lot of weight. But then bad lawyer or evil lawyer, okay, they have all the corporations backing them. They have so much money. They have so much power. They have a fat stack of evidence being like, actually, like I have evidence against that. And they're like, they have like all these citations of like, well, you did this and this and this and this and this, and this means that you're like bad, and like if you think otherwise, you're delusional. And then the jury's like, good point, like you're so smart. And it's like, oh, like I'm screwed because this is definitely a power imbalance, right? But it's so hard for me to like cheer on good lawyers sometimes because I'm like, oh, like things are not looking too good for you, right? Bad lawyer feels like they kind of know what they're doing. They like, they have their citations, they have their evidence. I feel like we should believe them, right? And honestly, I think like that's the best way to kind of put into words what goes on inside my head when I'm kind of in those like low moments. Cause like, why does it actually feel like that? And I think the thing with the lawyer analogy too is that the biggest part of it is no matter how much positive evidence there is, the negative evidence just does feels more valid and feels more like there's more weight to it. And I know the reality is that like humans just have like a negativity bias, but it's like, damn, like we need to get some like hype in here. But this whole like situation low key like made me spiral a lot. The situation being like just feeling like a really low point or just like doubting myself. And I was like, what does it even mean to have like healthy self esteem? Like, what does that even look like? I was like kind of spiraling. Maybe not spiraling, but I was like really thinking about it. And I was like, is that even like realistic and possible? Like, how does anybody like think that way? Like, does that just make you like super egotistical? And okay, I got to the point where I literally Wikipedia'd it. I was like, what does it mean to have good self esteem? Because I was like, I need to have an image, right? What does it look like? And then, so I read this description on Wikipedia. Sorry, this is so random, but like that description actually helped a lot because it just described a very mentally healthy person. It's like somebody who has like a strong sense of themselves, feels secure, is able to learn from their mistakes, gives themselves grace to grow. And like, because a lot of it is like you are, you know, changing and recognizing your mistakes, but you're giving yourself grace and like you're learning and you're becoming a better person and you're able to give other people compassion and you're able to give yourself compassion. I'm like, wow, that sounds like a really awesome, healthy, balanced person. Like that doesn't even feel real. Like not gonna lie. Like I don't know a lot of people who are that balanced. And obviously that's like an idea. Like I don't think Wikipedia is describing like a real person, like from a example with a name and face, right? But it really got me thinking. I'm like, damn, like I do really want that. Like that feels ideal. But honestly, reading that, it was in one sense, I was like, dang, this is so unrealistic, right? Or like, I'm never gonna get there. But at the same time, it also made me feel like hopeful because I'm like, okay, that sort of person doesn't seem like a narcissist. They don't seem delusional. So maybe it's not as scary to be hyping up good lawyer, you know? Like maybe it's not that bad and actually could be helpful because the reality is like bad lawyer is also like trying to protect you and like obviously we think of the negative things and we can be hard on ourselves because we're trying to like protect ourselves from like other like from hurting ourselves or embarrassing ourselves or just like right like these shields like the defense, right? And I was also like thinking about this too, like I was talking to a counselor about it and it was kind of about how we have our younger selves, like the versions from the past, and they feel like they're hurt more, right? And a lot of things that come up are more sensitive and will kind of like cut deeper because of the context of the past, about what it reminds you of the past, of something that was more painful. And honestly, it was also pretty interesting to think about that too, because it's like for me like high school for example is like oh like that was so long ago, like I feel like I'm such a different person, but a lot of the emotions that I feel are still very much attached to a lot of the like high school lore and like whatnot. So I kind of realized that like my younger self is still very like present within me, right? And kind of still like younger Johanna is still like her feelings are still being felt inside. And that was like kind of a crazy revelation. I was like, dang, like I thought I was like a different person. But the thing is, I feel like when you age, your younger selves are just like layers of the onion. Okay, you're just adding more onion layers, but the inner layers are still there. And I feel like your younger self can kind of come out in different ways and can be like summoned or like triggered by different situations. Like an example was I was talking to a counselor about how when I was in like student council in high school, like I felt I think very perceived by like my peers, especially since I was like I don't want to say public figure, that sounds so stupid, but like I was like the student body president, right? So like people knew who I was. I had to like go to a bunch of events and stuff, right? But I felt very like perceived, and it's just like high school ASB at the end of the day, but because that was like my life in high school, it was like I felt like so much pressure from people, and I think it made me really care about what others thought. And I think even in college, I kind of still have this same like kind of I don't want to say complex, but kind of same fear of like being perceived and just like being, especially being perceived as like too serious or too stuck up or you know too try hard or like a snitch or like I don't know, all these words that kind of like cycled through my brain when I was in that position as like a 16-year-old. And I think those things like still come back to me where I'm like, oh, am I being too this or too that or too this or too that? And it's like there's this fear of like I don't want it to be like how it was in high school. So I'm having these like protective measures and just these fears and anxieties about like how I'm acting. I think another thing that was kind of contributing to kind of the like maybe low self-worth or just like insecurities of this week was this idea of comparison. And I've talked about this I think a lot actually because it's been on my mind a lot, but it also kind of came up more this week because I was having conversations about other people with it. And honestly, having conversations about comparison with other people I think is the most healing thing, because I think comparison is the most like what's the word, like hurtful slash powerful when you are think you're in it alone, because the whole thing with comparisons, like it's just you, like you're the problem, like everyone else is doing this and this, or this person's doing so much better than you, and it's kind of like this zero in on like you and like you need to do this, right? And it just is, I feel like it's a very isolating experience to like compare yourself to other people. And I think talking about comparison with other people is kind of like liberating, because you're like, oh, it's literally not just me. Everyone's thinking the same thing, which must mean that actually everyone is struggling in some way, which is not to be like, yippee, everyone's struggling, but like everyone is struggling. Everyone feels like they are not good enough and they compare themselves, which means that actually everyone's like chilling. Like that means we're all doing our best, and that's enough. Nobody is better than the other person. We're all like figuring things out, and we're all like on our own path. Again, like nobody is better than one person. And I was actually having a conversation with these two friends that I actually really look up to, and I'm like, wow, like, and like to be honest, I actually compare myself to them a lot, or like at least in the past, because I'm like, oh, they're so much like smarter than me, they're so much more involved than me, like they're so much more ambitious than me, like I must be doing something wrong. And I had this like feeling for a long time, and low-key made me kind of intimidated, because I'm like, oh, like they probably like look down on me or blah blah. Obviously not. They're very nice people, very kind people. But we were actually talking about like all three of us were talking about how we feel like inadequate, and we feel like we don't know what's going on. We feel like we don't know what we're doing with our lives. And I'm like, dang, like I thought you guys had it all figured out, because from the outside I compared myself. But actually we're literally all in the same boat. And that made me feel like so much. I don't want to say, okay, look, I'm not trying to say I'm comforted that they're struggling. That's not what I'm saying, okay? I'm not like, yes, they're like, come on. But it's more of like, hey, we're actually all in the same boat. We can all support each other. And the reality is that we can also all affirm each other. Because if we all see like goodness within each other, but not in ourselves, right? But we can like cross apply that, right? It's like, because when I was having conversations with these people, I kind of brought them like, low-key, like I've been like looking up to you because I think you're so amazing that you do this and this. And that person was like, wait, but I think you're incredible in this way. And I was like, wait, I didn't even realize that that's something that was, good about myself, or something I could celebrate about myself. So I think it was really powerful to kind of like, first of all, name that we were all feeling behind and comparing ourselves, but also kind of like affirming each other and naming like, I see this in you and I see this in you. And obviously trying to release that from like the comparison trap and like, well, I see this in you and I'm not like that. But more of like, we all have our different struggles, we all have our different paths, and we all have like our strengths, and we can point that out and support each other and realize like, hey, actually comparing ourselves is like not helpful. What is helpful is like supporting each other and realizing that we all have our own individual strengths. Obviously easier said than done, but that was definitely like something that is like very cliche, but I think like living it, right? You still feel it, even if people like don't compare. It's like, okay, people compare for a reason. It's not because they're trying to hurt themselves. It's just very natural to do so, especially in a competitive college concept, like especially in a competitive college quarter system, like, or rigorous environment that is so focused on productivity and grades and achievements and career. Because a lot of things we were comparing ourselves with was career focused, academic focused, grades focused, extracurricular focused. Like that was kind of the main worry, was like, am I doing enough with my life? Am I like preparing myself for the future, right? So it's a very like college grind set sort of thing as well. Obviously people compare a bunch of other things too, like social life and appearances and whatnot, right? But I noticed that like there's specifically something like this little kick to like comparison with career and academics and extracurriculars just because of the pressure and like expectation of productivity and achievement and intellect in a university setting, in a capitalist setting. So I thought that was like honestly like pretty eye-opening. And yeah, I do feel a little bit better about it now, and it's like I'm able to kind of stop myself when I'm comparing and be like, wait, remember that conversation that you had? Like, you're good. You're good. And I mean, I mentioned this last, podcast as well, but like it's also just good to ground yourself in your intentions. I think when also you're comparing yourself and realize that you are on the right path because you are following the goals you set out for yourself, you're following the passions you set out for yourself, and you're doing things because you're trying to tune to your pace, your interests, and like whatnot, which makes so much more sense than trying to apply somebody like what works for somebody else and what doesn't work to you, right? Because then like that doesn't help you, that isn't being authentic, and that isn't going to like serve your life like in the long run. I'm also going to mention that like I said that I was like at a counseling session. It's actually very funny. It was on Wednesday. I went to counseling. I was low-key like tearing up, right? Because it's like feeling your feelings is not easy, okay? And like crying is a really good way to like let it out. On the topic of crying, I'm not gonna lie, sometimes I feel kind of embarrassed that like to talk about me crying or to talk about like how much I cry, because I'm like, they can't know that I have feelings, like they can't know that I'm emotional. But the reality is I do cry like a lot, like pretty often, because it's just like, I don't know, I think I'm just an emotional person. That's just how I express my feelings. And it also just like flushes everything out, if that makes sense. Like literally your body like flushes out like stress hormones, right? But I think afterwards I definitely feel like cleansed in a way. Like it's just good to process everything and just kind of let it out and talk about it. So I will say, obviously, like with counseling, like it was kind of awkward because I was like tears in my eyes, and then I had to walk from the SEC to Walker, like right next door, and then take my social class and talk about divisional labor. And I was like, oh my god, jump scare, whiplash, right? I was like, ugh. But the point is, like, feeling your feelings, processing it, talking about it, like this is all very obvious stuff, but it just like is so healing in of itself, and it made me feel so much lighter, like going into the day. Obviously, like I think processing that stuff can be very heavy, but I kind of felt like a weight was lifted off, you know? So I think like there can be a lot of shame involved with kind of opening up about feeling like insecure or comparing yourself. Like even on this podcast, I'm like, should I even be talking about this like on the internet? But at the same time, it's like kind of with the comparison thing, I think talking about it is so liberating because it names what you feel, it validates it, it gives like context for it, and with talking with others about it, you also know that you're not alone in that. Again, what I said about the isolation of it, and that there's like no shame in it. Like it's a very human emotion. And honestly, that's something I've been trying to like continue like affirming myself with, is like when I feel any like human emotion, I'm like why am I feeling this? Like I'm like so ashamed of how I feel. But I'm like, girl, you're literally just like feeling normal feelings. Like, oh, so many people feel this. And like I think it's obviously common and ideal to be like, well, you should be above this, like don't compare, like be healthy, be mentally healthy. But like is anybody mentally healthy 100% of the time? No. And like obviously you could know better, but like that doesn't, just because you know better doesn't mean you're gonna feel better, right? Like those are different things. Like you can know better and still feel your feelings, feel your human emotions, right? Obviously like how you act, there's a lot of nuance from that, but like it makes sense. And I think it sounds silly, but it's like I just need to get used to like experiencing the full range of human emotions, even if they are considered like shameful or embarrassing, because it's like it's better to just like feel it instead, because then if you like feel the emotion and you add another layer of shame and repression, then it just like adds more unnecessary, okay, not unnecessary, but like it just adds more to it, and you're just like you could just deal with this first layer, right? As opposed to like keep layering on like shame, repression, like no, like then you have to go through all those layers, and it's like ugh, right? Wait, obviously no shame to feel shame, right? That's also normal. I feel like I'm like running in circles, my bad, but hopefully point got across. A bit of a like sharp left turn, but I also wanted to talk about the idea of peace and kind of like what that word means to me, what that concept means to me, because as I mentioned before, we are doing fruit of the spirit stuff for InterVarsity, and we had a student speak about it this week on Thursday, and it definitely like kind of added new insight and knowledge. And I was kind of writing down like how I felt about like the topic, kind of my thoughts on it. And a lot of the like students' testimony and kind of like their talk was about conflict resolution and peace kind of in that setting, and talking about how peace is not avoiding conflict but confronting it and like resolving it, and having that like reconciliation, and kind of connecting that to like religion. It's like the reconciliation of God with people and stuff like that, and how we're called to do the same thing. First of all, when I first came into this like talk, I was a little bit maybe like hesitant, because I was like, oh, will this talk just be like everyone should get along, like no matter your differences? Because I'm like, I don't know if I necessarily vibe with that, because obviously, like with peace, okay, and like conflict, you can't just take the conflict and ignore all the factors of it and be like, let's just get along, because then that's like not fair or just, right? Especially with like, it makes me think of like politically, right? There are people who are like, why can't Democrats and Republicans just get along? And it's like, it's a lot more complicated than that. Like, or people who are like, I don't understand why you can't be friends with people with different political values. And it's like, again, there's a lot going on there that it's not as simple as like, we just think different, but we can still be friends. A lot of it's like values. A lot of it is human rights, treating people with dignity and equality, understanding power dynamics, understanding like oppression. Like there's so much going on there, right? So sometimes when I hear the word peace, it does get me kind of annoyed because of how peace is kind of used and weaponized, especially in like to counter kind of activism or social change. They're like, let's just have peace. Let's just have peace. Like no more fighting. And I'm just like, bro, like, why do you think people are fighting in the first place? Like there's real reasons. They're not just fighting to fight. Like these people are resisting actual like issues and oppression. Like, and then telling them to just like calm down, that's just respectability politics. You're just trying to like, by upholding peace, you're upholding like oppression, right? So that's why people say like no justice, no peace, right? That's kind of what like the mindset I kind of came into this with. But I also did really appreciate like how the student speaker discussed it, especially in terms of like relationships and peace within relationships. And specifically, we talked about relationships that are, I don't know what the word exactly was, but like what conflicts we have in our relationships, whether it's like family or friends or other people, and ways that we want to help reconcile them. And I thought that was a really, really fruitful discussion to kind of get into how we view conflict in our relationships. And it made me think a lot about my family, especially because of how, you know, conflict resolution and like our behaviors are passed down from like generation to generation. And yeah, I think even though I didn't like think of necessarily a reconciliation exactly, like you can't just like I can't just solve my family's problems in like 5 minutes, but it was helpful to talk about, and also to kind of connect family relationships specifically, or even like friendship relationships, to kind of how I think about future relationships, or even how I think about myself, or just how I operate in the world. Like to be more specific, like with my family, there are a lot of things that I had to like learn in, you know, being their daughter, especially because of like generational differences, cultural differences, being like first gen versus second gen, being like 20 versus my parents being like almost in their 60s. Like there's so many differences with that. And also like the way that they parent, the way that they talk to me is just like so vastly different. And like with our conflicts, even the way we try to solve them are very, very different. So yeah, it was insightful to like, you know, talk about that, and also like hear other people's perspectives on, you know, their relationships with their families, whether it was more positive or more negative, or something that they didn't know how to approach or they did know how to approach. But it made me like really consider the nuance that comes with peace, and understand like, and I was like, you know, grateful to to hear more about how peace is like tied to reconciliation. I think that's a great word to use too. It's not just ignoring the problem, it's not just brushing it aside or just being like, okay, just stop fighting. It's like, how can we actually come to terms with how we've been hurt, and how can we like kind of give everyone their due. And I feel like reconciliation also has kind of like a portion of justice and respect as well, that kind of like recognizes the wrongs instead of just like brushing over it or assuming that like everyone is equal standing. But I think extending kind of my idea of peace, there's definitely like also like a more personal element with how I see it. Peace just feels like similar with joy that I talked about last week, it feels kind of unreachable sometimes. Like it feels kind of like something that I'm like, that sounds good, but like I'm never going to get there, or like I don't think anyone's going to get there. I don't think society's going to get there. Like it just feels like a cliche, like a dream, like world peace, right? And obviously that's because, as I said before, it's not very simple. You can't just brush over conflict. Like you have to actually reconcile, and that takes like obviously tons of work, and for both parties to be willing to do it, and that doesn't always happen. So it's not always in your control, right? But I think also like personal peace, right? Like inner peace, or like peace with myself, or in my life. I think that still feels so out of reach, just because I feel like okay, if there are writers to my life, they're having a field day. They're having a field day with their plot, with all their twists and turns. They're trying to cross over left and right. They're trying to extend this season and add drama. And I'm like, what if we just had some like chill, wholesome slice of life filler episodes? Like not in a boring way, but in like a Johanna gets a break way. And I've made a lot of jokes being like, I can't even catch a break. I mean, the reality is like, I do have a lot that I can be grateful for. And the reality is also that getting surgery literally forced me to take a break to some extent, right? But sometimes it still feels like I can never reach like a state of peace. And I think it's also like, again, I don't think anyone can like fully be at peace all the time forever. But it's hard because I had to think about like what I want to see in my life and in my future. And I want to have all these things, but then I also want to have a sense of peace. And it's just like, can I have both, right? Like, can I have like meaningful relationships? Can I have time for myself? Can I be making new friendships and new relationships? Can I have a career? Can I do everything I'm interested in and still be at peace? And I think I especially think about doing like activism work or social justice work, and you're constantly confronting injustices, you're constantly confronting conflicts, and you're constantly just like being exposed to just so much hurt, right? How can you feel peace with that, right? How can you feel at ease or secure or any of those things? Like peace just doesn't feel like a word that even like is compatible with that. And that is something I am kind of scared of, where it's like I know that the work I want to get into is not easy, it is not necessarily peaceful, it is not necessarily like stable, or necessarily like chill in any way, right? And that is scary to think about, especially because I know that like as a person I can get very overwhelmed and burned out, and that's always something I don't want for the rest of my life. But it also is like very fulfilling, of course, so that's why it's like, I don't know. So some unresolved feelings there. But I think that talk was really eye-opening too, and I did really like that perspective shift. I think the last thing I wanted to discuss today was about procrastination, because I was struggling so hard this week about it. My biggest trap is being like, it's not that serious, and then putting it off. And half the time it really isn't that serious, so I am chilling and I'm just like regulating myself and trying to like not over stress. But sometimes it is that serious, and then I'm just avoiding it. And I make a joke too that's like, when I procrastinate, sometimes I just work on other unrelated things. Like for example, when I make designs for university, all of those are made when I'm procrastinating or not listening in class. I'm not gonna lie. All those are fueled by the power of me not wanting to do my homework or do my readings. And the reality is that like a lot of procrastination is about how you feel in your environment than laziness or, you know, lack of will. Like I really don't believe in those assertions that it's like procrastination just means that you're weak. Like, come on. Like, a lot of procrastination is informed by like how you feel, and that could be like being tired, being sick, right? Or like just not feeling well, having like poor sleep, having poor diet, like all those things are always going to make it hard to lock in and focus, and it's going to make you want to rest and put things off. Makes sense. But it also be like internal feelings about the work. I think the hardest one for me is like it's going to be so difficult. Like I don't want to do it. It's so difficult, and it just feels like the activation to get into it is so hard because I'm like, I'm going to struggle. I'm going to hate it. I don't want to do it, or like I just get really mad. I'm like, I don't want to do it. Like I just get frustrated, or just feels super daunting and overwhelming and boring, and I'm just like, like I just would rather do something else. Or I just feel like inadequate doing because I'm like, I'm not good enough to do this. Like everyone else is so much better, like I can't even live up to it. So there's like all these like internal feelings that really inform my procrastination, and I think it's kind of like overlooked, but I honestly think the emotional aspect is a lot more important to work through than like the practical aspect of just like doing the homework, because those blocks, those mental blocks are like super real. If they're stopping from doing work, that means they're real, right? And I think that means it's worth addressing and talking about. So honestly, for me, it's like with procrastination, I think the most effective thing is just talking about it. Like what is stopping you from doing it? What's something that's making it hard? And then the solution is, how can I make things easier for myself? How can I make it easier to enter into? And I know there's like a hack that like a lot of people use where it's like only do the work for like 2 minutes. And that's like a way to like easily start it and make it less intimidating. So it's like I only have to do one task. And slowly like you build momentum, right? As you get into, also sometimes when you just get like kind of in the zone, it's just like now you don't want to stop because like you're in the zone. Like why would you stop yourself, right? Obviously it's not always that easy, but even things like can I set up my study space to be very aesthetic? Can I get a fun drink? Can I, change my surroundings? Can I have good lighting? Maybe make my seats more comfortable. Maybe do it, with a heat pad if you're not feeling super good. Or just making the task as easy as you can, right? Like I try to start with something really simple, such as even just formatting, let's say essay, even just formatting it in MLA. That's easy, right? That's something I can do. And then I'll be like, what's the easiest thing I could write for this essay? Because while a lot of people are like, oh, do the hardest thing first, or like get it over with, right? Like don't just focus on the little things, you need the important stuff. The reality is like, if that's what's blocking you, that scary, hard task, giant task, then it makes more sense and it's more, I don't want to say more productive because the point isn't to necessarily be the most efficient or, most productive, but it's like, okay, it makes sense that you're at least starting it if you just do start with something that feels accessible and easy and something that you can actually start with, right? Because otherwise you're just like stuck in paralysis. So like for me, that could even be writing a conclusion, right? Or doing an outline, or actually sometimes I hate doing outlines. It could even just be writing quotes, like just typing from like my laptop, copy pasting things, because all that stuff feels easy and it doesn't feel like I'm actually doing work, but it still contributes to it. And then it kind of breaks the seal of like, I can't do this. Even like thinking of a title, sometimes I just do the citations first because that's just like plug and chug, right? You just keep doing it. But I mean, you're still doing your citations. You don't have to do it at the last minute because I hate doing citations last minute. So you're like kind of meal prepping for your essay. That's kind of how I put it. You like meal prep the different parts of it, and then you can just put it together. And I feel like in that sense, it just makes things easier. Wait, I kind of like this meal prep like metaphor. Like making a giant meal is really hard, right? Because there's like, I have so many steps. But meal prepping it and then assembling it, no, that is a lot easier. Especially meal prepping the day before, right? And then when you have to assemble it, like all your parts are there and you could just piece it together. Obviously essays are gonna be more complicated, but that's just kind of how I like try to approach it. I'm definitely not the type of person who can just like write it all in one setting unless I like have to, or the type of people who can just make an outline and just go from there. Like usually it's a little bit more complicated than that. But I think the last thing with like procrastination too is like sometimes you just need to like give up. Not like give up, but like sometimes you need to know when it's a good time to just stop working, because being stuck in that state of paralysis where like I should work, and you're just like, just like tossing, turning, procrastinating, looking at your phone, like the reality is like your body is asking you to rest. Your body is like, hey, I don't want to do this anymore. And there are times where you just gotta like lock in and do it, especially if it's like, really important or really due. And that's when I think it's like, I think making it easier is a good way to approach it. But then sometimes you just need to like listen to your body and be like, wow, I really don't want to do this. And that makes so much sense because I'm really, really tired, or I haven't eaten yet, or I haven't been outside yet, or I really need to socialize with people. And all those are very valid reasons to be like, actually, like, I'm done, and then I'm gonna go fulfill those needs. And honestly, that's another thing too, like, connecting with like the I need to socialize or I need to connect with people. The reality is like school can be very lonely too when you're like only doing schoolwork and only locking in, right? And there are times where I definitely prioritize relationships over school. And that's definitely more of a newer thing because in high school I would kind of forsake relationships for school and be like, oh, I gotta do my homework, right? But I think now my mindset is like, okay, I don't know if this makes sense, but like the conversations that I have with people, the relationships that I build, those are like real. But homework is like fake, if that makes sense. Like homework is generated by the professors to obviously help you learn and turn it in for a grade. But it's not like real, if that makes sense. Your learning is real, but like the homework isn't real. I hope that like makes sense to people. It makes a lot of sense to me. I'm not saying not do your homework, but just some perspective, at least how I see it, like I'm going to value kind of like the relationships in that moment because that's something that's going to like hopefully last for a while. And like also that's also learning, that's also growing, and that's also I think a really important part of like the college experience, like college education. I think that's all I have to say about procrastination. I'm not going to lie. But I think just giving myself more grace for it too, because it doesn't help to like procrastinate, feel bad about it, and then doubly like shame myself and then just shame myself more. Again, those are the layers, right? We can just start with the first layer, which is maybe I shouldn't procrastinate, and then just going from there, being like, okay, makes sense why you were doing it. It wouldn't be helpful to you to keep shaming yourself, so let's just find a solution. Let's just finish your assignments and lock in and try to make things easier for yourself. Boom. And then I did get my assignments done, praise the Lord. And I think I'm on like a better track. And if I do procrastinate, first of all, it's not that serious. Homework is fake. Again, applies to some and not others. Second of all, like fulfill your needs. Third of all, make things easier for yourself. And fourth of all, give yourself some grace. Hopefully that was a good like way to wrap it all up into one package. But yeah, I think that's all I have for today for the Chalanting Pod Nighttime Edition. I think I'm just getting really tired, I'm not gonna lie, and I'm going to go to bed and hopefully get some really good sleep. But yeah, I am wishing you guys all the best for any challenges, any tests, any assignments that you have coming up. I hope this episode resonated with you, and I hope you have the best sleep of your life. All right, good night and bye.